You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today we're bringing you an episode from Lifeline, offering a holistic wellness approach focused on supporting American law enforcement, promoting resilience, safety, and survivability.
Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to Precinct 444, everyone. This is Troy Anderson, Executive Director of Officer Safety and Wellness at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. I'm excited about this topic, this episode, because I've personally had deep interest in this subject matter for years, but as a former law enforcement officer with more than 30 years, I know that a lot of my brothers and sisters in blue have interest in this as well. This topic could have long-lasting consequences for them in life and their future, not only for their ability to transition smoothly into a civilian life, but also in achieving their retirement goals and setting up their family for a future where they can not only survive, but thrive. So let's begin by introducing my guest here today, Andrew Whiting from MissionSquare Retirement. MissionSquare is an incredible company who not only is in the business of supporting financial wellness for first responders, but they are also one of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's leading sponsors, without whom we would not have our cutting-edge ambassador program. Andrew, I'd like to go through your bio here quickly, which is very impressive and really speaks to how you've personally evolved as a leader in this company and its important vision. Andrew Whiting is Senior Vice President, Chief Sales Officer with MissionSquare Retirement. In this role, he is responsible for a broad range of retirement savings, financial planning, investment only, and advisory programs which deliver on the organization's mission of serving those who serve. He has overall responsibility for all revenue and client-facing sales teams across the organization. Mr. Whiting has more than 16 years of experience in the financial services industry. He brings extensive experience working with public and government sector retirement plans and has expertise across 457 and 403B retirement plans and defined contribution investment-only markets. Before joining MissionSquare Retirement in November of 2020, Mr. Whiting served as the public markets client advisor at JP Morgan Asset Management. He was responsible for public sector investment-only business. He also has served as National Sales Vice President for government markets at Lincoln Financial, responsible for leading the development of the tax-deferred business. Mr. Whiting holds the role of trustee for the New York State Troopers PBA Signal 30 Fund. Additionally, he's been bestowed an honorary lifetime membership in both the New Jersey PBA Local 265 and Dade County PBA. Mr. Whiting earned a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing from Fairfield University, and he is a registered representative. When we discuss holistic wellness in law enforcement, I'm guessing that financial wellness and the importance of solid financial planning probably isn't the first thing that pops into the minds of many. Yet today we're going to do just that. I think of this subject as just one very important spoke of the wheel of wellness. Financial wellness leads to the fortification of the other spokes, yet proper financial planning is often misunderstood or not even discussed. We understand universally that law enforcement personnel tend to be independent in their thought process and often assume that they can figure out the labyrinth of financial planning and investment options on their own. That's why I'm looking forward to this meaningful conversation and being educated by Mr. Andrew Whiting. Andrew, we've heard that you come from a family deeply rooted in law enforcement and first response. Can you share with us some pivotal moments from your upbringing that shaped your perspective on this vital field?
Troy, thank you. For me, it started when I was a young kid. My dad, I grew up in a small town. My dad was a police officer there. He actually was there for 40 years. But along his career journey, he, being responsible, he was a DARE officer in the school. So for me, he was just somebody that was a part of the community. He was in the fabric of the community. For me, I always wanted to, if I got into trouble, I always wanted to make sure that I was out of the principal's office by the time my dad came in to teach his class. And they always seemed to kind of finagle it that I got to stay in the office just long enough so that he could see that I was in there. So I got one of the taps on the shoulder. I'll talk to you when you get home. And that's kind of was the story of me with school with him, starting even earlier than that in preschool, taking our class around. And it was such something that was such an honor to have, and you don't realize it at the time when your father or your parent is a police officer, getting picked up, and sometimes in the back of the police car, and they're just scrambling around between shifts and, having my dad there, with the police radio during birthdays and holidays, because we lived in the town that he was serving in, serving the community. So sometimes he'd have to jump out, if a call came on. And, one of my really earliest memories was my brother and I. We sat around, we had a police scanner in our house. And we sat around, we used to listen for calls. And, if there was something, a little bit dangerous coming across, we'd always kind of wait around to hear our dad's voice on the radio just to know that he was safe. And, my mom would come in and usher us up to bed and get us in the bed. But we knew that he was going to make it home. Mm-hmm. So it was something that had a major impact on me in my life, was seeing, the impact that a police officer had in the community, not only as a child, but as you grow up. And fortunately enough, I kind of accidentally found this opportunity to work in financial services. I had looked at, law enforcement, went through the steps with the U.S. Marshals, looked at local law enforcement. And while I was doing that after school, the opportunity presented itself, and I kind of accidentally fell into this business. Mm-hmm. And I was working at a company that worked in the 457 area, and they found out that my family was involved with the police unions, involved in law enforcement. There's a lot of my family that's in the tri-state area, between retired and active, well over 20 family members and extended family members involved in law enforcement. So, they got me involved with the unions, and a lot of people I knew or had grown up with. So it was great being involved, but then I got to get into really what was the driver, the driver for retirement. And I saw my own dad's, journey. Mm-hmm. There was, everybody kind of relied on the pension, and, sure, the pension was going to take care of everything. And, that was a big pro. That was one of my pros and cons, when I was making it, going and looking at law enforcement. But one thing that wasn't there was the education on the 457 plans, on the deferred comp plans, mm-hmm. For the officers. And, and for him, he could have taken advantage of it more. I saw my other family members, they could have taken advantage, and they didn't have, somebody there working closely with them, because some people work at midnights, mm-hmm. They may not see somebody. So it was just, I really felt that it was an important benefit that, not enough light was shed on it, and not enough firms had spent the time to really dive into it and understand how the market works.
Well, it sounds like different. Certainly a rich appreciation for law enforcement. It sounds like you were running in that circle for a long time with such an extensive family network. One of the things as you were talking, I thought about my own personal experience when I started in the Connecticut State Police Academy many years ago in the earlier part of the 90s. And I remember that opportunity where we got a chance to have exposure to at least understanding a little bit about what a 457 was. And I think the explanation lasted somewhere about 10 minutes, and everybody got a form. And if you want to sign up, great. And if you don't, great. And then they collected up the forms and left. And that was our indoctrination into sort of investing outside of what the pension plan would be. And there really was never, until I took over as the behavioral health coordinator several years later, there was never really any exposure to discussing things like financial wellness or retirement planning or transitioning into a civilian life. It's a very real thing, and I think that there needs to be that exposure to it early on. And I made sure that when I was in that capacity, serving as the behavioral health coordinator and then eventually the director of trooper wellness and resilience, I was able to bring that into the academy and make sort of those spokes of the wheel more important, right? Because we talk about physical and psychological and spiritual, but where's the financial component? And we know how important finances are, especially when you're in public service, because you're not making the abundance of money that many sectors are. I mean, you're doing okay, but you have to be able to figure out how to navigate through that. So, Andrew, as we look at the health challenges faced by law enforcement officials and first responders, it can be unique. Can you shed some light on some of these challenges and the impact that they have on the lives of these individuals?
I've had the opportunity to attend a lot of conferences, talking to other public safety employees around the country, and some other research is really, it's clear that public safety jobs take a toll on first responders' bodies, both
Hmm.
mentally and physically.
Sure.
An example at the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, they found that shift work among public safety workers can increase stress, depression, harm your immune system, increase heart disease risks. Think about, every time an officer gets out of the car and that it's routine traffic stop, that officer, their adrenaline is spiking. They have no idea what's facing them.
Sure.
It could be a mom being late for, soccer practice. It could be, somebody that had just stolen a car. You have no idea. That adrenaline spike on a day-to-day basis has an impact on first responders. And, as a result, of the impact, the way the retirement works, public safety workers are retiring early. And it's a fact. They're going out earlier, and it's important for them to have enough resources to get them through, not only to retirement, get them through retirement so they can sustain that standard of living, not go
Hmm.
on and have to find second careers.
Sure.
So obviously the pensions play a big role in it, but really the research alone is, there's got to be other sources.
Exactly.
Social Security is not there for every first responder. And, we're all taught when we get into, financial services, the three legs of your retirement stool, your
Hmm.
pension, Social Security, and your private savings.
Sure.
Well, if pension and benefits are changing, Social Security is not there for everyone. The 457, 401A plans are that much more important for the public sector and for public safety.
No, I agree, and we all know that those stressors you're talking about and those physiological things that happen they're cumulative. It's not just acute, right? I mean, they sort of build over time, and that's really why we look in our officer safety and wellness program it's a very holistic approach, right? We look at making sure that we take care of that mind, body, and spirit, but also not forgetting that the financial component is significant. And if you do retire, and I've seen many people retire in their early 40s who have successfully planned and invested, who have been able to go on and never had to get another job unless they wanted it, but it wasn't a necessity. And I think that's it's really important that we're having this conversation, because I know that there are people that are listening today that you are piquing their interest, because they're saying, this is me right now, and what have I done? And I think everybody who's listening right now who is a first responder needs to sort of evaluate their own portfolio as we talk about this very important topic, and reevaluate whether they are contributing significantly enough and in the right place in order to understand things like diversifying, right? I mean, this is not something that historically most law enforcement people have a real firm grasp on. I didn't, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know that I still do. I'm sure that you have forgotten more about these options in investing than I have ever known. So I think it's important for us sometimes when we are helpers, we tend to help everybody else, but not ourselves. I think this is a real opportunity to look at ourselves and look at our family's well-being and say, am I doing enough currently? And then evaluate, how much longer do I want to be doing this? Because I don't want to be that 65-year-old guy or gal out there working, taking hot calls every day. And, because your body just and your mind can only take just so much. And I think we recognize that, hence the reason for retirement plans. So in your experience, what are some of the most common misconceptions that people have about retirement planning, and how does MissionSquare work to address and rectify these misconceptions for its clients?
Well, I think some of the misconceptions, that happens, it just happens right there in headquarters. When I was a rep, I'd come in and I didn't go to enroll officers. I'm the new face, in the police department, and there's a trust factor with the officers among senior officers. And so some of the officers, sergeant would say, "Hey, deferred comp guy's here.
Yeah.
Go meet with him. He's here before and after the shifts. Go meet with him. Sign up. You'll thank me in 25 years." What do I do with my money? I'm all in the capital preservation. I won't lose money. It's great.
Right.
A 22-year-old rookie coming in wanting to sign up and just stash it all in a capital preservation may not be the answer. So it was my job, and it's our job really, and something that MissionSquare takes very serious is to sit down and educate on the difference between stocks and bonds, what mutual funds are, what are the options out there, and how, because everybody's retirement, everyone's vision, everyone's retirement is unique. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a one size fits all. And that's the misconception. You look at the commercials, you look at the advertisements out there, everything, is on an island, is maybe
Right.
running through the airport and traveling somewhere. But everyone's retirement is unique, and it's important, especially for us, and our team that works with first responders, is to understand the unique, um, criteria that everybody has and what they expect for their retirement. And then, of course, it's putting a plan in place to get them there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a recent study actually by Aon. They're a global consulting firm. And in a typical DB pension plan, you need to save about 4 to 6% of their salary on top of their pension to ensure that there's adequate retirement income. And as we talked about earlier, the physical demands, and having more time in retirement, it's important that all public safety are sitting down talking to their representatives. For us, it's not even just what our reps are doing in the field and working on a day-to-day basis. We also do a little bit more because we are focused on the public sector, and we do a lot with the Research Institute. The MissionSquare Research Institute does a lot of work around first responders, around the public sector, to understand the nuances in the market. And that's what's unique for us, is because this is where we're focused, is to make sure that we can drive those positive outcomes.
And that's, that's exciting. I'm really interested in hearing more about. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the role of the MissionSquare Research Institute and the ways in which it supports the well-being and the future of public servants, and what notable contributions has the institute made so far for the sector?
Yeah, sure. So our research arm, the MissionSquare Research Institute, plays an important role to understand the needs of the public sector, both the employers and the employees. The Institute conducts research in really 3 key areas. First is retirement,
Mhm.
second health, and then health and wellness, and then the workforce issues. So their research has helped our firm understand what we need to do to best support the market. It also helps us to educate the stakeholders, like the policymakers, on the needs and issues of the public sector.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example. During COVID, the Institute released research on a regular basis on the struggles facing the public workforce. There was a lot of, struggles around stress, burnout, and then financial challenges.
Mhm.
There's a trend in public sector where pension benefits, they're diminishing, and a significant workers do not participate in Social Security. So it's understanding that and getting that information out to help drive those better outcomes. So we actively are working to dispel some of the misconceptions, considering factors like rising healthcare costs, increased cost of living, and escalating interest rates. So relying solely on the pension may prove insufficient. So we want to make sure that we provide that comprehensive look into what retirement could be. So by fostering and building awareness, it's a really a multifaceted approach. So it's, providing research, but it's also our boots on the ground, providing the financial solutions, and MissionSquare, is utilizing that research to develop the products to help the public sector.
Right, and it seems like it's clear to me that you folks genuinely care, right? I mean, you have a completely unique approach, at least in my opinion, and people genuinely, especially in the first responder community, they don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the fact that you're spending the time to educate them and doing that valued research in order to really be able to show them tangible changes that they can make to their futures. I think that's exceptional. So in a competitive market, what sets MissionSquare apart from other retirement service providers? And are there specific aspects of your approach or services that you believe make a tangible difference for your clients?
I think in the competitive market is all of our employees, number one, are focused on the public sector. this is what we do. This is how we were started over 50 years ago, was for the public sector. And it was really built by the public sector. So all of our focus is there. And when we're researching and we're looking at product development, it's not, a lot of companies, they're in the insurance business, the annuity business, maybe the 401k business, and those are big drivers of their balance sheets. So the work that we're doing there is to support the marketplace. All of our employees, when we look at it, it's the education. When we sit down, we not only have our reps that are working, we have available to some participants certified financial planners at no additional cost, to sit down and do a actual comprehensive portfolio for them. And then of course is you're backing it by research. Everybody has an opinion until you actually have data points to prove that, it's not an opinion, this is fact. So it supports a lot of what we're doing. And the company, the mission is very strong here. The one thing, it's important to me is my background, right? This is what I grew up in. I accidentally found into this, but I feel like I was born to work at MissionSquare with the background I had. But a lot of our employees have the same background. I love it when I can go into a presentation, I can look around and say my entire team that's here, for certain presentations, they have a direct family member that works in public safety or for a public entity. And we have many retired, public sector employees working for us. So that really drives home the mission even further. Sure. When you have individuals that went in and worked for a municipality, whether it's in the public safety side or civilian side, and bringing that knowledge and that experience to MissionSquare.
And that brings with it a lot of credibility as well, especially when you're looking at, a lot of law enforcement systems in general seem to be relatively closed off. And when you can make that connection and say, my father did this for 40 years, I was in the back of that squad car getting picked up at school, that does open the door a little bit to folks saying, all right, come on in and tell us a little bit more, Andrew. We want to hear what you got going on.
Yeah, Troy, as long as I wasn't picked up in the squad car for other reasons.
Of course. Yeah, it would have been a different conversation with your
Yeah, that's a whole different story.
Considering the evolving nature of the retirement landscape, how does MissionSquare adapt its services to cater to the changing needs and expectations of its clients, particularly those in law enforcement and first responder communities?
Really looking at the aspects that are changing is us really understanding the market, and really being involved. And when I say being involved, it's not just being in City Hall, police headquarters or a fire station. It's being involved in the industry, looking at what trends are happening, whether it's on the legislative side, whether it's in other tax codes, and seeing how things, will parlay into the public sector space. So for us, we're constant students of the marketplace, constantly learning, constantly seeing how we can take things and bring innovative ideas to engage the public sector better. Because at the end of the day, one of the challenges to always remember is these are supplemental plans. The main source, I made the mistake early on in my career too, thinking about it. It was a pension, right? But what else can I do to help supplement income? And it's always a second thought. It's an afterthought. Whereas, if the time is spent there with financial professionals, you could do really well in, your supplemental plans and really have the retirement that you're looking for.
And that's really the key, professionals, right? Yeah. It's about finding those folks that have the knowledge base. And, I can't tell you how many times I still have my 457 plan that I started in 1993. And I look back at that. And of course, I wish, like you hit on earlier, I wish that somebody had said, you really need to maximize the amount that you're putting in there. That would have been great, except I put in $20 every other month for a while. But really back then, that's all I could really afford. When you're starting out back then, there certainly wasn't the money in law enforcement that there is now, and certainly a lot more to go. And clearly, I think they're undercompensated for the work that they do. But it's great that there's an organization that cares so much. Could you share a success story or a significant impact that MissionSquare has had on the lives of law enforcement officers and first responders, perhaps highlighting the importance of thorough retirement planning and financial security?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question because that's something the proof point. That's really important for us. So we have an officer, retired officer that's working with us as a retirement in the retirement plan service side, working with, you know, all the employees in several municipalities. But during his law enforcement career, he actually got to utilize the CFP services, our
Hmm.
certified financial planners, and work with our RPSs. And the understanding and everything that they were able to do with him throughout his career and the advice he received played a big part. And he wanted to retire on his 53rd birthday, and he was able to do that. And now he had the benefit. He really liked the services that we provide. He actually joined Mission Square and was able to come and work with us. And those are some of the positive. And then there's other stories that I constantly hear on a day-to-day basis, especially because of my interactions. I try to work very closely with the unions. Is the individuals that are going above and beyond. It's working with the officers, and become extensions of the officers. Of the police department, of City Hall, of the benefits office, because of the time they have there, and really working to hit goals and objectives that the city may have. So some of these RPSs, they get early involved with officers, and they're just able to make such an impact. Yeah, and nobody realizes every meeting has such a long-term impact by getting
Yeah.
out. So Troy, think of when you got retired. If somebody was there on top of you, and every time, every year they push you, hey, increase by another $25, increase by $10. What can we do budgetary? The long-term impacts that those types of meetings have
It's huge.
is huge,
Yeah.
and it's that compounding interest over time. It's just one piece of the puzzle, but it's important. I think for us, the success is understanding the needs, especially of the law enforcement officers, so that we can meet them on their terms, their grounds, and really explain things so that we can really help the officers get to retirement.
And when you talk about financial planning, and I mean, it's just a magnificent service because I can't tell you how often we have in the law enforcement community, we have that conversation about everybody wants to talk about, well, when are you going to retire and have you saved enough? But I can't tell you how many times people have said, well, how much should I have saved for retirement? That's not a question you ask your coworker whose background is in law enforcement. That's not who you're asking. I don't know what is enough. Andrew, I don't know if you know what's enough, but I bet you would if I opened up everything that I had and I said, this is when I plan on retiring. This is how much I've saved. Where's the gap and how do we make this work? I'm sure you've probably encountered that quite a bit.
Yes, and it's important. That one of the amazing things about Mission Square is not only is the people, but it's having the tools and the solutions. So the combination of those three really make an impact in a participant's life, because you can sit down, you can utilize the tools that we offer. We have the products and the solutions, and when you're sitting down, the expertise is there. And
Hmm.
the understanding is there, and that's where the rubber meets the road, and we can really make an impact, and have those impactful conversations.
So I know you folks you're nationwide, and I can only imagine how do people find Mission Square, right? So it sounds like Mission Square is actually working with agencies all across the country already. And how else? I mean, I know that there are people that are listening right now saying, maybe my agency doesn't have this, or why don't we have this? And they're going to be asking the questions, and they're going to want that solution piece too. What's the solution? How do they find you?
Yeah. So our really we're very grassroots out there growing, the business. So we're
Hmm.
looking not only in the conferences and attending, state or national union events, reaching out to municipalities. Many procurement departments or benefits departments will go through, a competitive RFP.
Hmm.
They'll put out a request for proposal looking for vendors to respond. So usually we'll try to engage, learn as much as we can about a municipality through, before it becomes a public bidding process,
Hmm.
and make sure that we're putting a competitive bid. Some municipalities, they're looking not only just at the service model, they're looking at price, they're looking at the tools, the solutions. So we try to get in early, to have that conversation with the municipalities. My ask is for the law enforcement community is to reach out to us, because the law enforcement community and our first responders are heavy contributors into their their deferred comp plans. And they're free to engage with us, talk to us, and so we can learn more about not only them but about their city, their municipality's plan, and then we can ask a couple of questions and figure out where we need to go for the next steps and to have those conversations and learn more. But we're very, very open, very interested in being aggressive in growing around the country, because we do feel that what we offer is very compelling, and we have a really strong understanding of the market.
Yeah, and if there's rank and file folks that are out there listening right now, don't be dissuaded by the fact that you're not in administration. You can talk to your administrator, you can talk to your human resources representatives, suggest the name, have them look into it, bring it to the front of people's minds, because I think there are so many law enforcement officers and first responders in general across this nation that this is the one. As we look at that whole holistic wellness approach, this is that one aspect I think that is not talked about enough. And I don't think it's talked about enough until folks retire and then realize that they hadn't talked about it enough. So it's time to start talking. The earlier, the better. What are some of the key initiatives or programs that MissionSquare has undertaken to prioritize the mental health and overall well-being of those in law enforcement and first responder sections as they transition into retirement?
We've actually undertaken a couple of key initiatives there around mental health and the overall well-being of law enforcement and first responders during their transition into retirement.
Mhm.
So our research institute, they've done extensive research, and one of the compelling stats actually came out of it. 76% of the respondents described themselves as very or somewhat stressed over the past 6 months. And in this response, we recognize the importance of addressing those stressors, actively advocating for employers to really enhance emotional support measures. The research conducted by the Research Institute unveiled a concerning reality. A majority of the public service express a lack of confidence in their retirement savings, resulting in heightened stress levels. Now think, Troy, everything you have going on in your day-to-day job and family life.
Sure.
That's a lot of stress on our first responders, and then you tack on the stresses of retirement. It's a critical issue, and it's something that we're providing. We're putting a comprehensive education program
Mhm.
around it to the public sector. We're aiming to empower individuals within the public sector to plan effectively, enhance their retirement strategies, and sit down. I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said about sitting early. I mean, think about it. Who at 40 is really thinking about retirement, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you want to be thinking about it. You want to be sitting down with somebody, because if you're retiring at 50 or 55, you want to have things in place, and as you really want to start out from day one, but being actively engaged and working with your provider is key.
Hey, yeah, I agree with you. And going into retirement should feel more like a comfort zone than perhaps a life sentence in prison, right? We should want to look forward to it. And I think with the proper planning, with taking care of yourself, one of the things that always has occurred to me when we talk about wellness in general, regardless of what aspect, is you look at new officers coming into, and regardless of what first responder capacity it is, right? So you're coming into, we'll just say for the sake of argument, police work. How is it that you go through this multi-phase screening process? Psychologically, you're well, physically, you're well. You go through all this screening. You go through an academy where you learn all of these new laws, and you get to run around and do push-ups, and you're in great shape. How is it then if we start this career 20, 25, 30 years later, so many of the folks that we're with are unrecognizable, and many of them are unrecognizable financially as well? Because you think as we look at that transitional period into going from being a sworn officer to now being a civilian, there's a real psychological component. There is. I mean, it just that comes along with it. But that psychological component can be eased if you know that financially you have a nice soft place to land because you put the work in early on, and no longer, and think about the hundreds, thousands of officers that I've encountered all over years. They get very used to, sadly, many of them are living above their means. they're living in nice houses and boats and new cars and all these things, which is sort of the antithesis of what we're talking about. We're talking about saving and preparing for that future. When a boat is depreciating, it would be better if it were in your 457. That would make sense, and you can take that boat later after it's made some money. And then where do we go from there, sort of psychologically? Where do we go from there, saving that money? And it's tough. You no longer have the overtime. You're losing your colleagues, your coworkers. You're not going to look for bad guys anymore. So there really is. It's not just a one size fits all approach to retirement. I think we really have to recognize that transition and heading to retirement, it should be really like finishing a chapter of a good book, or finishing a race and running across that finish line and being so pleased with what you've done to prepare for that win, or being so appreciative of what that chapter held for you. And I see too many people going toward retirement, and it's that one component that we're talking about today, that lack of financial planning, that is what is keeping them from stepping over the threshold into retirement. That's the one thing. Everything else lined up, but because of poor planning or no planning, it just seems unattainable. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I know that people are going to be listening to this right now. The wheels are spinning in their head, and they're thinking, there's definitely something to this. I thought I was the only one feeling that way, but I'm not. So looking ahead, what are some of the future goals and aspirations that Mission Square has in terms of enhancing its services and support for public service servants, rather, especially in light of the unique challenges and demands that these individuals face throughout their careers and beyond?
For us, it's continuing to advocate, with our private sector counterparts. We're looking at states, how they can offer the auto features like auto enrollment, auto escalation. Those are features that are commonplace in the private sector that aren't available in the public sector,
Sure.
not widely available in the public
Mhm.
sector. The Mission Square, we're really dedicated to the support, of not only of just of further legislation, but also supporting, the community, supporting Police Week, the Memorial Scholarship Fund. This is part of our community initiatives. We want to play, and we continue to play a vital role in aiding families of fallen public service employees. We actually have an awarding of post-secondary education scholarships through surviving children and spouses. And since 2001, we've committed by granting over 600 scholarships, over 1.5 million in tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Wow.
So it's twofold. It's on the retirement front and the legislative side, but it's in the community. It's meeting officers, in their time of need, and to be that over encompassing company that really gets it, and
Sure.
and that's something that's important for us as we look down the road, is continuing that, continuing the legislative side, is how we can improve the plans and laws around the plans, and then of course is supporting, the officers on the ground.
I'm going to challenge you here, Andrew, because I want to hear some great advice from you. So let's just say hypothetically you are in an academy setting right now today, and there was a recruit that approached you, a 21-year-old police recruit who knew nothing about investing, nothing about a 457, and he is or she has the opportunity to invest right now. What advice are you going to give that rookie officer in the early part of their career?
Invest, start from day one. As soon as that first paycheck hits, put the money away so you're used to not having that money, and look to increase every year, the compounding interest. It makes a tremendous, tremendous impact.
Hmm.
So get in early, and the earliest money that gets in there has the biggest impact in retirement. That first
Hmm.
dollar means a lot more in 25 years than that dollar in year 15.
And I would imagine that you would probably offer similar advice to maybe some more senior officers who I know with the downturn in the economy have opted maybe for a more conservative approach. Maybe they've pulled back some of that money they were putting in their 457. Maybe they're keeping it in a traditional savings or checking account. What is the long-term impact on that? And what do you tell them?
They have to get in. So Troy, when you think about it, think of when there's unused vacation, sick time that's going in. this is pre-tax money that's going in. You know, and
Right.
and those latter years, especially the year you're retiring, that is I know my brother's own department, so my brother is, I feel like taking on a financial role, you know,
Sure.
as a sergeant in his department, but just because he's familiar with the financial implications. But several of the officers are coming to him looking at retiring, and he'll sit down and no one's doing this, but sit down and explain, hey, if you go in December versus going in January, and what that impact has on your taxes, and then you educate the officers as they're in their latter part of their career, because they can max out, they can do catch up contributions, and then when you get those larger checks in retirement, you can defer it. You don't want that big tax income. You want to keep as much money working hard for you as possible.
I mean, that's just terrific advice. And it saddens me to think that there are so many officers out there, both retired and current officers, just first responders in general, who are out there doing a yeoman's effort to keep people safe, who make so much sacrifice. Their families make so much sacrifice, and yet they have the ability and the opportunity to invest in these plans that many folks don't have that opportunity, and they are whether it's because of a lack of education or a lack of exposure to it, just really have not fully invested. And I always encouraged, especially when I was a sergeant at a state police barracks, and I had new guys and gals that would come in, new recruits, and I was the field training officer supervisor. And that's one of the things that I would tell them. I said, listen, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's compounding and it's adding up. And yeah, the market goes up and it fluctuates, it comes down. I get that. And it's tough when it's 2009, or it's maybe where we currently are now, or where we were a year ago. And I saw what that did to my 457, but it's a long-term plan. It's not short-term, and there's not a lot of folks, and I can think about who our representatives were over the years, and I know that it changed hands a few times, but they weren't coming in necessarily to educate us like you're doing today. They were coming in just to try to get more folks to subscribe to it. And I think that the approach that MissionSquare has and that you have individually, I think goes a long, long way to at least opening the hearts and minds of people who are doing this job right now, who are doing it so admirably. Yet it's very difficult when you're 21 years old coming into a profession. You're excited, and maybe you're scared and you're a little bit nervous, but you're really not thinking about retirement in all likelihood. It's not until later on. So I think that there's some really sage wisdom that has come out of this discussion today, and that is invest early and invest often and maximize the amount of contributions that you can based on your status in life. But if folks aren't living beyond their means and they are putting that money away, it's going to make a significant impact down the road. And I really applaud what you're doing as an individual, what MissionSquare is doing. I look forward, Andrew, to a long relationship with MissionSquare and us having the opportunity to work together. I think this has just been absolutely insightful. And I think we should schedule another one, because even though we were just going to do one, I feel like I'm going to get emails, and anybody who wants to email me and I can connect you to Andrew, you can email me at tanderson@nleomf.org. I'd be happy to intake any questions you have. Andrew, I shouldn't have said that without asking you first, but your inbox might fill up, but I can tell that you're passionate about this. I know that the good folks from MissionSquare, they really are just an amazing organization. And I think that they're going to end up, I know they are making an impact, but I think over time are going to make a significant impact on this vocation. And I'm glad that we had an opportunity to get this dialogue box open. Andrew, anything you want to say before we wrap up today?
Troy, I'm grateful for the opportunity. My passion is shared amongst all of our employees. You know, we are all truly dedicated to the mission. And for us to be working with the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund it's something that hits home personally for me, but hits home personally for us as an organization. This is who we are, and we're right where we belong. So I am excited about continuing to work with you and the organization, and we're here to support all the officers in the country, even if they're
Okay.
not a client. You know, it's important. We do important work, and we serve those that serve the community. So it's very important to us, and we're grateful for everybody's service, for protecting our communities, and we ask that they stay safe.
Well, Andrew, it has been a pleasure talking to you and an honor working with MissionSquare Retirement. I look forward to a long relationship. Thank you again for sharing a whole bunch of your expertise and experience today. I think that's exactly what we needed to keep this conversation going. And until next time, thank you all for listening to Precinct 444.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the precinct.